Okay, let me just zoom back out a little bit. Go back to where I was, go into my hand tool. And you can also apply an end to a stroke. So either I can do the same one or some other one. Let me do this hollow circle. So you can get some interesting combinations, and there's a tremendous amount of variety. Okay, another thing that you need to be aware of is when you're using projecting caps. Let me show you why. I'm going to get rid of the arrow at the start and the end. I'm going to go back to none as well. And now I'm going to change the type of stroke to a dash. And you'll notice that there doesn't appear to be a dash. Remember I said earlier, you have to be really careful about projecting caps because it works with dashes as well. It's actually projecting the dashes out in both directions. So to use a dash properly, you're going to have to go to your butt cap. And let's see, why don't we make this just a little bit thinner? Why don't I go down to like 10 point? So we seem to be getting these squares. Let's see, why don't we zoom in a little bit again just so we can see what's going on here. Go into our hand tool and recenter a little bit. And back into our selection tool. You'll notice that there's something down over here where you can begin customizing your dashed line, because there's something called dash and then there's something called gap. Well, what happens if I make the gaps half as much? And I just click off of it. You can see that the gaps closed up. And you can actually do several different point sizes in here to do these really customized dashes. So, maybe the next one is a 6 dash and a 12 gap. So you can really make things that are very interesting looking. And maybe then I go back to, let me see, do something totally different, a 4 and a 4. So you can set up this pattern where if I went on long enough and it was a long enough stroke, you would actually see it repeating. You can begin to see it repeating over here. Okay. And why don't I just go back to the 12-6, and I'm just going to eliminate the other ones. Just going to put zeros in there. And 0 and 0. Okay, and I'm going to click off that last one to apply it, because there's one other thing I wanted to show you, which it really doesn't exist in any other layout program. And this is called gap color. I can actually pick a different color for the gaps, which is really kind of cool. So you can get fairly customized with these various strokes that you can apply. But that's really just the beginning of customized strokes, because under the options menu of the stroke palette, there's actually something called stroke styles. And you can see a lot of the existing styles, but if I go and click on New, it opens up this, what looks like a fairly complex dialog box. I realized that if you just click someplace in this ruler, you can pull out another part of this stroke. And maybe I'll make a real small one over here. So I'm actually creating a dash similar to what I did down over here, only it's a whole interface that I could actually save this as a custom dash. And besides custom dashes, there's also custom dots, so you can have varieties of them as well. You can position them. You can see what's happening here. They're actually so close together, they're actually overlapping. So it's a very interesting way to create your own strokes. And down the bottom, in any one of these areas, whether it's dotted or there's a Dutch rule, there's dashed, you can change the preview weight to make it smaller so you can see how that affects the actual stroke you're creating as well. Let me go into the last one, which is stripe. And you'll see this is very similar to dash, only just the opposite. It's going the other direction. This would be a thin, thick, thin. You can see it down over here. So if you're ever confused by what's going on in your actual creation part of the stroke window, you can always go down to the preview to see what's going on. And you can see this is broken up into percentages. Let's say the stroke is 20 points. I mean, I'm just going to go up, make it real thick so we can see what's going on. And so it's 20 points. That would mean that 25% of that 20-point weight is this part of the rule. 50% of it, from 25 to 75, is the center of the rule. And the remaining 25% is the bottom part of the rule. But let's say I wanted to make something that was too really thick. I can drag both of these down so they come real close to each other. So I'm ending up with a real thick, very thin, and real thick again. And, you know, if you don't get it exactly in the right place, you can always change your settings to make it precisely what you want. So if I wanted to change this, you know, and I wanted to call it custom rule, just so we can spot it right away. Custom rule. And either I can click OK or just add. If I click add, I can create additional custom rules and, you know, add a whole bunch of them to the stroke palette. But I'm just going to do this one. Click OK. And you can see right away down the bottom, there is custom rule. Because there's a gap color applied, it applied it to the gap in between my two very thick parts of the stroke. Okay, and if we remember our paragraph rules, let me just slide over there really quickly and go into our paragraph palette under paragraph rules. Well, let's see, here's the type of rules, and you'll notice something kind of interesting. The rule that I just created is actually now in the list. So if any place that you can use rules within InDesign, it will be available in the list.